Americans.
Tonight, FBI files revealed. For more than 100 years, the FBI has been gathering information about events and people, some famous and some not. It has millions of files, and we wondered what agents knew about famous Hoosiers. We found some of the results, in some cases, surprising.
Am I blue? You'd be too.
By the time he appeared in To Have and Have Not in 1944, jazz fans were paying attention to Bloomington native Hoagie Carmichael. FBI agents were too. Much of this report filed on him in 1944 was blacked out, but agents noted that he wrote My Christmas Song for You, and he visited someone's home and place of business in October. It's not clear who or why. But just 2 years later, his name appeared again, this time in an FBI report investigating, quote, foreign-inspired agitation among American Negroes. It had to do with a referendum in California to outlaw discrimination in hiring. Carmichael appeared at a concert promoting the measure, along with stars like Frank Sinatra, Phil Silvers, and Desi Arnaz. And Carmichael wasn't the only Hoosier-born star with an FBI file. Beech Grove native Steve McQueen got away from the Germans in The Great Escape. He attracted attention from the FBI for going to the 1963 Civil Rights March on Washington. He took a chartered flight from California, and look who else was on the plane. Charlton Heston, Gene Kelly, Paul Newman, some of the biggest stars of the day.
My guess would be that they thought this march on Washington could turn violent. How many people do you think thought that?
Bill Irvin retired from the FBI in 1990. He says this wasn't a criminal investigation, but an effort to know as much as possible about the march.
With this whole plane full of people, look at who they were. I'm shocked they all got on the same plane together. Pearl Bailey and Desi Arnaz and Steve McQueen. Goodness gracious. Those are big, big Hollywood names.
McQueen also showed up in another file for his activities in Hollywood. An agent concluded that the 1968 film, The Thomas Crown Affair, would show the agency in a bad light by portraying a female agent who uses her sex appeal to get information.
But for every Hoosier that you would not expect would have an FBI file, there's probably one that you would. And one of them is right here at Crown Hill Cemetery. Convicted bank robber and murderer John Dillinger became the FBI's public enemy #1.
As the raiders run from the bank with $20,000 and 2 hostages, Dillinger shoots a police officer dead.
His FBI file contains thousands of pages and even includes things like an invoice to replace a window shot out by agents when they tried to capture a member of the Dillinger gang, approved by J. Edgar Hoover himself. The problem was, back in the 1930s, Dillinger's crimes were local and state matters. The feds couldn't legally touch him until after his famous jailbreak in Crown Point.
By crossing state lines in a stolen car, he has become the legitimate prey of the FBI.
The FBI eventually ambushed and killed Dillinger outside a Chicago theater. His file contains a record of his killing. The Bureau's file on singer Michael Jackson is a record of the investigations it carried out into alleged child abuse, even though the federal government never charged him with a crime. But the FBI is not just focused on criminal activity. If you open the file on the late Congresswoman Julia Carson, you would see the Bureau not looking into her political activities, but investigating threats made against her. And it kept a file on Hoosier Chicken King Colonel Harlan Sanders, who wrote in 1970 to ask Bureau Director J. Edgar Hoover for an autographed picture. The file notes that the colonel's order was filled.
And these FBI files are available to anyone. Many are online, and you can get additional files by making a request directly to the agency. We'll show you how to do that through a link at WTHR.com. You can find that under Hot Topics.
And you have more information about Colonel Sanders?
Well, you know, the colonel
So interesting.
seemed to have a fascination with J. Edgar Hoover, so he wrote to J. Edgar Hoover on several different occasions, and J. Edgar Hoover was just sort of paranoid enough that getting letters from somebody kind of turned his interest back on Colonel Sanders. So there's actually a little bit of a file on Colonel Sanders, and he also had some death threats made against him at various times too. So it's interesting the things you find when you dig deep.
I thought it was going to give us the 11th secret spices to the rest
Even
of
the
it.
FBI doesn't know.
Even the FBI doesn't have that.
I do want to say that John Dwan